Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Before we delve further into our conversation for today, let's listen to this background report by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
Nigeria's participation at COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, focuses more on efforts of the country in the mitigation of the effects of climate change. This supports the world's efforts to address climate change and its effects and has been the subject of discussion for almost 3 decades at the annual Conference of Parties COP of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This year's COP is the 29th edition of the conference. Nigeria is there to advance its climate change agenda and related issues and also have high expectations. Nigeria's long-term low-emission development strategy and carbon markets program have already been commended by the conference parties. The country has committed to starting efforts towards achieving net zero emissions by 2060, as promised at COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland in 2021. Parties are negotiating a new collective quantified goal, a more ambitious, transparent and predictable climate finance target that better addresses the needs of developing countries for mitigation, adaptation and loss and damage. The second week of the 29th session of the Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change started on a high note, with parties adopting a number of decisions. Some of these were negotiated at the UNFCCC's subsidiary bodies in June 2024 session, including several decisions on capacity building and extension of the mandate of the working group facilitating the implementation of the local communities and indigenous peoples platform. Parties also adopted decisions agreed to during the first week of COP29, including on matters relating to least development countries and technology. Now, will some of these decisions and agreements be implemented domestically amongst countries, especially in Nigeria? What are some of Nigeria's gains so far? Our guests will be answering these and more questions shortly.
All right, many thanks, Oyeyemi Ajayi, for that background report. Let's now begin introducing our guests for the conversation. And let me begin with Dr. Chimereme Ohajinwa, who is here with us in the studio, environmental toxicologist and public health expert. She is the team lead C-Circle Foundation for Sustainable Health and Environment. A pleasure to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, sir.
Also joining us this time from our Kaduna studio in Kaduna State is Professor Awal Farouk Abdul Salam, Professor of Applied Meteorology and Environmental Sustainability, Kaduna State University. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
And Good Morning Nigeria.
All right. Also joining us via Zoom from Baku is Representative Samuel Onuigbo, former member of the House of Representatives and sponsor of Nigeria's bill for the current Climate Change Act, and Southeast representative on the board of Northeast Development Commission. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much indeed.
Right. And still joining us via Zoom from Baku is Dr. Nkuruka Madweke. She is the DG CEO, National Council on Climate Change. Dr. Nkuruka, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
All right. Let's just stay with you, Dr. Nkuruka, being the DG CEO of National Council on Climate Change, and we know that you are there. Can you just tell us about the COP29? What exactly are the objectives of COP29?
So very clearly, the objective for this COP, nicknamed the Finance COP, is to ensure that we firm up on the climate finance objectives and commitments. One of the things that Africa is asking that is, in addition to the 100 billion already pledged, is that the developed countries would also scale it up to 1.3 trillion. And we're also saying to them that there has to be a reform of the current finance architecture to ensure that what is called climate finance is climate finance and is not confused with development finance, which are two different things, and to ensure that the developed countries meet their pledges, that is no longer talk as usual, but those talk will be matched with clear investment opportunities and options. And then secondly as well is firming up on Article 6 of Paris Agreement that touches on carbon markets, basically firming up on the structure for Article 6.2, 6.4, and also 6.8. For us as African, for us as Nigeria, the carbon market presents an opportunity for us to have what we call non-oil revenues to ensure that we're able to meet up on our NDC priorities as well. Thank you.
Right, many thanks, Dr. Madwekwe, for your opening remarks. Let's just get across to our Representative Samuel Onibo, who is not too far from where you are there. Good to see you. Mr. Onibo.
Yes.
Just wanted to find out, I'm sure you've listened to Dr. Madwekwe. What have the proceedings been like? Does it look to you like it's going in a way that it could be more productive than the last time out?
Well, thank you very much indeed. We are making progress in that things are getting, taking a proper shape. By this, I am talking about even as a continent, we are negotiating and speaking with one voice. If you have had the chance to read the speech by Mr. President, presented by the minister, you would find that everything we said there, yes, we're taking our position as a nation, but it's aligned, if you are discussing this issue of carbon market, it's aligned with the position of Africa on the issue of carbon market. And why I say that this is making progress is that last year during COP29 in Dubai, Mr. President activated a committee where he appointed the director, the DG of National Council on Climate Change, and the chairman of Federal Inland Revenue as co-chairman on how to activate the market. And then, if you look at that, you will find that that is based on the law. Because if you go to section 4, subsection I of the law, you will find that there is that requirement as part of the functions of the NCCC to be able to come up with these things in a collaborative manner. It's the NCCC that has the authority to coordinate, but then it has to be able to do these things along with Federal Inland Revenue. That's when you're talking about carbon tax. And then you're talking about carbon as a whole, as provided in section 19. You are going to carry along ministries of environment, national planning, and all that, and also Ministry of Trade. So for us, having the law in place, and then these things are falling in place gradually. Yes, there's a challenge about negotiating Article 6. It's been there, and the concern we have is that this is almost 9 years since this was passed, and countries are still having challenges. Even the global north, they are not coming forward, but progress is being made, and the joy that I have is that this is coming in a coordinated and sustained way. That's why I'm hopeful that we are moving towards the right path.
Okay, thank you so much, Honorable. We'll get back to you. Let's go to our Kaduna studio where we have Professor Awal Farouk Abdusalam. And my question will be that do you think, or how will this summit actually address the growing concerns of let's say, growing concerns about climate change, particularly in the vulnerable communities in Africa?
That's a very good question because all this climate discussion, negotiation, and the conference of parties of 29 years, the benefit or the main the focus of it is to trickle down to the downtrodden, and they're the most vulnerable people to be affected by this climate change from all angles, especially here in sub-Saharan Africa and in Nigeria, where by geography and by our underlying socio-economic factors are readily vulnerable to the climate, to the changing climate, and we are witnessing these vulnerabilities and reactions to it. So coming back to the negotiation. Like I said, this is the 29th year of these negotiations. This year's objectives were so ambitious, but generally, from the with the researchers and monitoring what is going, the outcome and the implementation of the outcomes, you can rate it very, very low, and this is to some extent dashing the hope of these vulnerable communities. For example, this year's COP focused on financing, which is very good, ambitious, from billions to trillions, climate education. But to me, the most important thing for countries like Nigeria and Africa is to focus on the issue of adaptation strategies, which the vulnerable communities, as you said, have already, from local researchers, have already been coming up with ways to adapt, very crude ways to adapt, and some of them don't even know or don't even really understand what is going on. So connecting the vulnerable communities to the COP is very difficult because the access, the benefits cannot be seen or are not visible at all so far. We don't want to say that the discussions are just for the elites, for the scientists, of course, are there, but these are national governments coming to discuss. But most of the resolutions are not well implemented. Especially, example is the 100 billion per year fund, which is very difficult for African states to access because of the protocols in accessing the funding. Now there is a call for increasing the funding. I think the most important thing is to call for accessibility, and that is the only way that will help our government to transition from non to clean energy, which is very, very necessary in fighting climate change.
Victor.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much. Let me get now into the studio where May is. You've had the privilege of listening to all of our guests, those in Baku and outside of Baku. What would you say are the most important decisions taken at this year's climate so far when it concerns Nigeria?
All right, so good morning, everyone. Good morning, Nigeria again. So this year, there's a lot of focus on increasing climate finance and making it clear that there's a difference between climate finance and developmental finance. So you don't confuse both. So when you're talking about climate finance, it's like you're driving to the climate change impacts. How does it affect, how does it improve in relation to climate change, not just developmental finance that is focusing on reduction of poverty. Yes, they can be interchanged, but it's better we have very clear goals and guidelines on what we want to do. And so at this year's COP, the emphasis is on how can the developing countries get the developed countries to pay more this year. So last time it was $100 billion. This year they are estimating higher. Like, how can we get it to be working? How can we operationalize what is there. So it's not just going to be ambitions, but actions this time around. And then how can we operationalize it? Even things that has been done in 2 years ago, like COP27, we talked about loss and damage, but how can we get it operationalized? How can we make sure that these things are measurable and you're achieving them, not just talking. These are the major things we are discussing at this year's COP in relation to other things that have been happening over the years, like I said, Honorable Nibo's said. So for 9 years, you've had this, that. Can we measure them? So it doesn't look like we're just talking. So that's what they're focusing on this year.
And for Nigeria, what should be the most important concerns out of it, the most important wins out of COP29?
Okay, so for every COP29, every country, so COP, for people that don't know, COP is a conference of parties, and it's a conference where you discuss climate change, which has become a lot of issues. So there are countries that have been underwater, flooding, that has been there for a long time. A good number is Sudan. Some part of Sudan has been underwater, the particular states. So if you're looking at
Nigeria
has flooding, but it's like we have these flashes that goes, then comes, but there are places that has been very, very destructive, right? So sometimes you look far-fetched when you're talking about it in Nigeria. And so Nigeria also went to this COP with what we call nationally determined contributions. So meaning that there are things we want to achieve. We are looking at how can we use renewable energy more, invest more in it. So this helps Nigeria to work. So when we go for COP, it brings visibility. It helps us to align ourselves better with the international community, with other African countries. How can we partner more, increase things that make us improve on our climate change? How can we reduce emissions? How can we partner more to do better? Nigeria is investing in renewable energy a lot, in solar, in wind. Now, Nigeria has added climate change and health to our national determining contribution. So it's not just we are managing waste, we are increasing on renewable energies, we are looking at transportation, but also health, the impact on health as well. So yes, these are important things. Those 7 things that Nigeria went to COP with is what they are focusing on. And most importantly, how can we get more money from developed countries to implement these strategies in Nigeria?
We can get more money from the developing countries from developed countries to implement all this in Nigeria. So let's go. Let's direct that question to the DG. Just like your opening remarks, you talked about the emphasis. It's on finance. That is development finance and climate finance. My question would be: what funding mechanism are available to support climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts, especially in developing countries?
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify, when I said finance, I said clearly that there has to be a distinction between climate finance and development finance, and that's what we as Africa were also saying to the world, that do not lump it up. There's development finance and there's climate finance. The order in terms of finance available to countries. You have multilateral finance or funding like the GCF, the GEF as well. You also have adaptation fund. You also have as well philanthropy fund. You also have parties also contributing as well to assist other countries. We're talking about money coming from the north to the south. You also have South-South partnerships that will help to bridge the gap. What we're also saying, or what I have seen clearly in this COP, is the fact that as a country, we need to have very clear finance strategy. We have to have very clear pipeline of projects. That is what is coming out from this COP, that if we want to get investment, we need to be clear as to who we want and where we want financing for. And then as well, one of the things we are saying to them is that we don't want loans. We're already overburdened by loans. How can you help us to build our resilience with regards to adaptation? Because that is very key for us as Africa and as Nigerians as well. We're saying to the global community that we did not contribute to carbon to climate change. Our emissions are as low as 3%. I mean, we're talking about the continent. And so if at all you're going to help us, you have to help us build resilience with regards to adaptation. yes, we understand that mitigation, yes, but one of the things we have seen is that a lot of people want to fund mitigation and not adaptation. Why? Because can you hear me? Yes, because
We can hear you.
okay, thank you very much. Because mitigation, with mitigation you have high return on investment, but with adaptation is more like there's really no, what do you call it, profit in that. And so you see, the focus for them is mitigation, but the focus for us is adaptation, and that's what it is we are chasing. And we're calling and we're saying to them, listen, you have to bring in more money for adaptation, and that is the stance that Africa is taking as a continent, and Nigeria is also taking as a country. All the forums we go to, with regards to methane emission reductions, with regards to building climate smart agriculture, with regards to renewable energy solutions, we're also bringing up the issue of value chain localization and saying these are opportunities for you to come and build, manufacture these solutions in Nigeria with regards to Project Evergreen. And so these are the conversations we're having on the table, and we're putting it out there to say, listen, Nigeria is a market for you. But as a country, you cannot overburden us with excess, with more loans. Can we think grants to help us move and build our resilience, our adaptation, because we already have low adaptive capacity, and that's why the impact of climate change is affecting us the way it is. So these are the issues on ground. And like I said, just to be very clear, one of the things that is coming out very clearly, leaving COP29, is coming back home and ensuring that we have clear finance plan. I don't know if you're aware, but we have the nationally determined contribution implementation framework that we are now turning to a financial plan. And what is doing for us is that we are merging the energy transition plan, the NDC implementation framework, which we're turning to a financial plan, the adaptation compacts that we have, and also to merge them all together to ensure that Nigeria has one clear document that can tell any investor, with regards to adaptation, bring in money here. With regards to mitigation, bring in money here. So taking away from COP29 is Nigeria needs to have very clear financial strategy, investment pipeline of projects that will be able to drive in investment. And again, important is operationalizing the climate change fund that is in the Act. With the climate change fund, Nigeria is able to warehouse multilateral financing, multilateral funding. We're able to also get money from, as well, the National Assembly. We're also able to get money from states and coerce it together, collect it together, and be able to address the issues in the subnationals. Like my colleague in the States said, again, what is coming out again, I'm so sorry, what is coming out again from this COP is there has to be an alignment from the national to subnational. And one of the good things that has happened in this COP was that we were able to bring, as the National Council on Climate Change Secretariat, we're able to bring participants from the states, from the subnationals. We first and foremost trained them as negotiators, and secondly, what it is we did, we were able to bring them with support from the funders, from donor partners, because you have to bridge that communication gap. These things happen at the subnationals. At the national, we do the law, we do the policy, but at the end of the day, these things happen at the states, and so the states need to be on the table. They need to understand, and so these are the things that are coming out of this COP29 that we're going back home to Nigeria to ensure that all these issues are effectively and efficiently addressed.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Madwekwe. I'll just cross over again to Representative Samuel Onigbo. When you were pushing for the climate law, when you were pushing through your bill, what you envisioned, what you envisaged, how far have we come with implementation as a country? Have we lived up to expectation, given how many years have now gone by? Are we where we ought to be? Because Nigeria also has its own responsibilities. When you are calling on others to meet you at certain points, you also have responsibilities to meet them, somewhere halfway. So have we reached where we ought to be?
Thank you very much. Well, it's a great ambition. So maybe imagine that we have already reached where we ought to be. No, we have not reached there. But one thing is clear. The law in itself, the Climate Change Act, when we were working on it, or when I sponsored it in Parliament, we came up with the view that we should think into the future. And I'm happy about some of the things that are coming up. I listened to the DG very carefully, and she talked about bringing in the subnationals. So in terms of what the law has done or what the law is helping them to do, yes, the law has made all these provisions. She also talked about the climate change fund. It's provided for in the law. And we thought about all these things ahead. And then on the other issue of the subnationals, the law provides for a representative, that's the chairman of the Governors Forum, to be on the National Council on Climate Change whenever they sit, whenever Mr. President presides. Similarly, the law also provides for the president of the Association of Local Governments of Nigeria, which is 774 of them. What this has done, actually, is that it does not stop there. It also provided for the inclusion of youths, women in their own rights, apart from women who are coming from Ministry of Women Affairs, and then even people with disabilities and the private sector. So if you look at it generally, you will see that the law has a wide provision, is ambitious in nature, and we also using this opportunity to encourage the subnationals to come up with their own climate change governance frameworks so that they will understand these things better. Like the DG said, the position is clear. Nobody, the climate change emissions and all that, they do not come from the villa. They come from the Aso Villa. They come from villages where we burn the forest, where we fell trees, where we do engage in some funny minings and all that, or those who are, refining fuels in the local areas. So these are where the emissions are coming from. So, but the law is quite ambitious because it has provided for these things to be done. So for me, I think we have a great opportunity, we have hope. And it's important that from what the DG said, they are not just working on today, they are trying to capture the law the way it is. Law should be, fully implemented. And what I will perhaps say here is that, yes, I sponsor the law or the act in the parliament, but we're also looking for a way for the government to make sure that it understands that it has a near perfect umbrella organization like the National Council on Climate Change. Today, you've seen people come from Ministry of Women Affairs, you've seen the minister here. People have come from different aspects, aviation and all that. And that's why in structuring this law, some of us insisted that it should have an umbrella body so that you can accommodate agriculture, you can accommodate environment, you can accommodate, Ministry of Petroleum, you can accommodate the Ministry of Women Affairs, Transportation, the Office of the National Security Advisor, Office of, Governors, Chairman of Governors Forum, and a lot of all those other ministries and MDAs. Again, apart from the subnationals, the private sector is also required to play a role. The law provides for this and even provides for fines. So we have a law that is recognized, that is respected globally. A number of persons will tell you that they have read the law outside of Nigeria. Some have used it for research and they recognize that the law is strong. So it is the implementation, the support for the National Council on Climate Change, so that they understand that it's no longer, one ministry that is saddled with a responsibility. No, we have a coordinating body that is cooperating, collaborating with Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Trade, Federal Inland Revenue, Ministry of, Water Resources, and all that, to be able to come up with things that we require. It's not something you finish, you start and finish now. But I started my statement by saying, look, we are making steady progress. When Mr. President was here last year, before he came here, he read his budget and said he was going to be involved in the issue of climate change. And he did that in paragraphs 23, 24, 25 of his speech. And he has gone ahead to begin to exercise leadership in a very admirable manner. So these are the things you require from a leader. He was there, he led from the front, and he got involved on even how we're going to triple renewables. And not only that, he also issued a piece on CNN News where he said, we have the chance to leapfrog in issues of manufacturing from the green angle. And of course, he followed that up by setting up the Evergreen. And that Evergreen, if you check, you see that we have similar organizations in South Africa, in India, in Indonesia, to be able to propel development, bearing green manufacturing and green industrialization in mind. So we are taking this thing step by step, and it's important that we have the law, we follow it, and of course we'll arrive at that destination that we have in mind.
Thank you very much, Honorable Onuigbo, for that, your comment there. The need for us to strengthen the law, I mean, to make it more inclusive. Let's go to Professor Farouk now. I mean, Professor Farouk, you just listened to the Honorable and also the DG emphasize the need for us to have a strategy that will be a better strategy that will be more inclusive so that the recommendations can be well implemented. My question will be, what strategies do you think can be employed to enhance climate resilience, especially in the subnationals or in the communities in the country?
You see, it's just like the written rule in law in real estate marketing. What they say is location, location, location. So in climate change issues, especially in Nigeria and sub-Saharan and the entire African continent, the issue should be adaptation, adaptation, adaptation. I so much like the way the DG spoke about adaptation and mitigation, and defining it differently, and how the less developed look at it and the developed look at it. The best strategy we can adopt to achieve our target is enhanced adaptation. And this adaptation, we are not talking about bringing in new things from from somewhere, and enhancing local adaptation, so that a farmer in Sokoto or Ilere or a fisherman in Bayelsa that is losing his yield can finally find a way to enhance his livelihood. So the entire strategy should revolve about, around adaptation. You cannot have a successful adaptation plan without having a grassroots input. That is one. Secondly, is what almost all the speakers are talking about, the engagement and involvement of the subnational governments in formulating the policy of adaptation, and then finally implementing it. Like I made mention, we've observed some local farmers have already, evolved some adaptation techniques. But the problem is they do not even understand clearly what is happening. They are only trying to adjust, in a kind of, in a very, unscientific way. So the idea now is to, if we can access these grants, which I don't even want us to lay more emphasis on it, locally within the, the national government should provide funding, and the subnational government should provide funding for local researches that will, find, these small-scale adaptation techniques, enhance them through scientific methods, and engage with local communities to adopt this, because the issue of climate change is real and impacting. So the best strategy is adaptation, adaptation, adaptation.
All right, thank you very much, Prof. Adaptation, adaptation, adaptation. I don't know how much Dr. May agrees with you, but for me, at the end of the day, when we talk about COP and climate change and all that. The ordinary Nigerian, it's looking like what are they talking about? How do you begin to bring it down to the level of the ordinary Nigerians to be able to follow as well and chip in with their own, bits here and there?
Yes, you're right. It sounds a bit abstract to a lot of people. What they are concerned is, I want to eat, I want to be comfortable. I don't know what you're talking about, right? And then, but if you have had an experience where you experience flooding, experience all of this, and compared to what used to happen, is that the awareness is coming closer home. Things that don't used to happen is happening now. Our seasons are not the way it used to be anymore. They are having rains more than you used to have, or not coming as it's supposed to come. So even if you say you don't care, to an extent, you are beginning to be aware, like something like this is happening. Maybe some animals you're seeing, you're no longer seeing them. You're cutting down trees you're not supposed to cut, and then you're beginning to have things you're not supposed to have. Earlier this year, in February, there was a lot of, which wasn't common, right? It wasn't like that. The dust was so much, at least in Abuja. So that also means that there was increased hospital visitations. So if you have children that have respiratory issues like asthma, there was increased hospital visitations. So people are beginning to say, oh, what's going on? Why is it that it's not clear anymore? It's because, the sound or the dust from the Sahel are having free access to us. Those things that could have been blocked by trees the trees are no longer there. So they just come easily. So yes, the normal people or people that are most vulnerable to it are not getting it. But that doesn't mean that there has not been impacts over the years of what these COP meetings are about. There's increased knowledge, there's increased policies, that we are beginning to talk about renewable energy. We are talking about our youth are getting involved. We are getting to empower them. They are part of, at the COP, there is a youth section. They are talking about it, so that your people are not going doesn't mean that our people are not sending their people as well to be part of it. So the youth are more aware in schools, in secondary schools. They're talking about it now. So people are more aware. So the issue now is how do we move it to action that will really have measurable outcome, right? But yes, people are not seeing it. But if you can ask the normal a farmer, they are beginning to experience it a little by little. And then I think Nigeria is putting in a lot of effort in it.
But do they know what they are experiencing? When you say they are beginning to experience it little by little, do they know what it is they are experiencing?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, that there's a lot of increase in knowledge about what is going on. So because if you're in the agri sector, there's a lot of increase in it. You're looking at food security. Why am I not producing as I'm supposed to produce? Is either there is drought or there's flooding. So what's going on? So there is also indigenous knowledge about how to know these things that we didn't study the science of the indigenous knowledge. It's like the indigenous knowledge just lost. But we are bringing it back when you go for agri meetings and seeing how do we communicate it better to people. Is it a language barrier? What is it? Is it finance? So these are some of the things that have been the benefits of going for these COP meetings, as we are having better visibility, international collaborations, youth engagement, policies. We didn't have National Climate Change Council before, now we have it. So there's a lot of impact that is making, and more people are getting to know about it, and it's just having it to sink home and you relate to it in your everyday life from any sector where you are. So you might not be in agri, you might not be in health, but is it happening in your own sector? Being able to understand that this is what is going on and how can we adjust, apart from, yes, we are hungry, I want to eat, I don't care what they're talking about, but how, if I don't care, what does it mean in the next 10 years?
It becomes, this is one area where awareness, where enlightenment becomes so important. And that's why I want to ask the DG. I don't know how much you are prioritizing, creating awareness, reaching out, advocacy, publicity, or whatever you call it in those terms. How much is that a priority for you?
I was going to raise my hand and say, oh, can I talk? So thank you for asking me this question. What you said is the key word, awareness. And for us is collaboration and synergy. The media is so key to everything we're doing as Secretariat. With the media, we're able to cut across different demography. And when we say media, we're talking about radio, we're talking about the print media, we're talking about the online, we're talking about TV. And our strategy is for us to work closely with the media. And then also work closely, because we already have an agency in Nigeria that his role is creating awareness, and that's the National Orientation Agency, is to have that relationship with National Orientation Agency that has offices in the 36 states of Nigeria and the FCT, to be able to ensure that we get to the states, we get to the subnationals, we're able to speak in your language and help you understand what is climate change. The first one. The second one is, what are the NDCs? Because for us, in reviewing the NDC 3.0, the third generation NDC, we're not going to do it just at the national. We want to be able to get conversations from the subnationals, and that's why we started with the national stock take, that we're able to get to the subnationals and ask them, what do you think Nigeria has done with regards to climate change, climate action and climate implementation, right? And so it's very key. We are very at the forefront for us, and priority for us is working closely with the media, working closely with agencies like the National Orientation Agency to ensure that we're able to even go to the local governments, working closely with the CSOs, civil society organizations, who are also food soldiers, who know this, we'll call them koro, these inside places, and have been engaging all this while with these people, and to ensure that we have a uniform, collaborated approach. And that for us is the strategy we're using as a National Council on Climate Change Secretariat, to get this information, like Dr. May said, to get this information and increase awareness of this information, to get people to further understand that, yes, you're having the impact of climate change, but what is this climate change? Why is it important for me to change the way I do certain things? Why is it important for me not to just indiscriminately throw plastics and all that? Why is it important for me to basically behavioral change? And for you to have behavioral change, understanding is key. And we need to get the people to understand. And again, at the forefront for us is capacity building. How would we get the press to share this information? Capacity building is important. To work with the press, to build the capacity of the press, to be able to inform the Nigerian public about climate change issues, to be able to bring the public along, to help them as part of the dialogue, as part of the conversation. Again, we're also looking at working closely with the young people as well, the youth, because Nigeria is a young population, and we have more youth, in terms of our demography. And we're talking about the future. We're talking about sustainable development, which is ability to meet your current needs and not affect the future to also meet its needs. These people need to be on the table. Awareness creation is key. So we're looking at all different areas. We're not just looking one way. Where for us is working with all the relevant stakeholders to ensure that the women are involved, the young people are involved, the youth, of course, Ministry of Youth, Ministry of Women Affairs is very important. These stakeholders to ensure this message across gets to the right.
DG, for that, letting us know your effort in creating awareness, especially getting the people, the media and other sectors involved in this awareness campaign. But I still want to stay with you, because earlier on, Honorable Onuigbo mentioned the need for you to get the buy-in of the private sector. So what's the council doing, to get the private sector initiative, especially in financing this climate change issue?
Thank you so much. Like we said, we're working with all relevant stakeholders, and the private sector is key. You cannot talk about finance without talking about the private sector. One of the things I've been saying, even before coming to COP, is saying that we have to be able to bridge the gap between public finance, private finance, and donor partnership. There is so much, there's a limit to which public finance can go, public funding can go. There is a limit to which donor partner or donor funding can go. But there's so much that private sector finance can go. How do you bring them into the conversation? One of the things we're doing as National Council on Climate Change Secretariat is to train the private sector on Article 6. Socialize the NDCs with them as well. We're doing that in the next coming back from COP. That's one of the first things we're doing, because we've seen that there's a gap. And how do you bring people to buy your idea if they don't understand what you're talking about? And again, in September, we with the support of NDC partnership, National Determined Contribution Partnership, we had what is called the checklist, and the checklist project is ongoing, where we match the private sector with would-be investors, with intended investees. And at that forum, we were able to explain to them what NDC was, or what NDC is. And a lot of what came out from that was, we need to engage more. And that is what we have at the forefront for us. We need to engage the private sector more. So the first thing we're doing is having that workshop where we're getting private sector, we're getting companies to come and understand what Article 6 is with regards to the carbon market, what is the nationally determined contribution, and where do you fit in? Where can you see investment opportunities? Also with regards to our pipeline of projects, also to train them on projects, carbon projects. Because one of the things we've also seen is a gap in understanding what will fit as a carbon project. And so for us, it's also building their capacity so that they can also engage. And to say to them, this is a market for you. I'm told that there's a lot of I remember talking with Abuja Chambers of Commerce, and they said to me, we have the money. I said, I agree with you. You have the money. I need to bring you into this conversation so that you can help us to effectively achieve our NDCs. And so one of the things we're also saying to them is that your investment is going to be aligned with our NDC priority sector. So not just investments, but investment to help drive Nigeria's NDC priority sector. Because one of the things we're also being told at this COP29 is to have a more ambitious NDCs. Well, how can we have an ambitious NDC without finance? And so private sector is important.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hajo. Thank you very much. While you were speaking, Dr. May has been itching to respond to some of the issues that you raised. So perhaps you have the time to do that now.
Oh, okay, so when she was talking about private sector involvement, yes, it's very important to look at private sector involvement, but that also has to do with our policies. What are the policies we are putting in that make them benefit? Because most businesses, yes, the businesses have the money. Government cannot do everything. That's public financing, right? But the policies are important. So the business, first of all, even if they're investing, they are going to make profit first. That's usually so. The policies are important that we set in such a way that they make profits. The business environment is very good for them. I'm in a consulting, so private sector part, and you're coming in, and sometimes you see this blockade and you're wondering, are you sure we want to make progress? So we need to get it done because they have the money to invest in research, in innovation. They have the money to test run whatever it is that they've talked about in COP. How does it work here? But so if private sector is bringing money for research, bringing money for this to see what it is, can they make their money back? Because if they can't see where they make money, then there's really no need for them to invest.
That's value for their investment.
There must have value for their investment. Another thing that is going on now is that a lot of, in developed countries, it's a plus for you to be seen doing sustainable practices, right, for businesses. So it's not just like, oh, there are alternatives for me not to pollute the environment, destroy the environment. And that's the selling point for people that are interested in environment to buy your products. So if there are alternatives for you not to use plastic, and I'm also using a biodegradable material, and I'm getting what I'm supposed to get, a lot of people that are environmentally conscious will want to support that. So now, with that awareness, getting the businesses to understand that there's profit in this, in having sustainable practice. They also want to invest in that. But for them to invest in that, they have to do a lot of research. So after they've invested money doing the research, the policies or the policy environment must be good for them to be able to get back the money. But that research is important because they're going to publish it, other people are going to use it, and they start using it. So things that you think happen in developed countries, you want to copy and paste here, find out it won't work. So you need the businesses here to invest in research to be able to to see what works in our context. So that's one thing I just thought I should add to that in terms of
All right.
sustainable practices.
Thank you, Dr. May. Let's go to Professor Farouk now. We're talking about this adaptation strategy, but my question will be this: how can climate change adaptation be integrated, into our national development plan?
Is pretty straightforward. Most of the plants we have a component that can, already adaptation is part of it, and even if it's not clearly part of it, can be easily, assimilated. So it's a pretty straightforward issue. Yeah.
All right, Prof. Thank you very much. That was quick and brief. Well, let me get to Representative Samuel Onigbo. Now, given your understanding and knowledge of what we set out to achieve with the Climate Change Act, are we falling short in terms of policy? And where would that be? What do we need to do in terms of policy to get us to where we need to be?
Thank you for going back to the question you asked earlier. I think for now we have an act that needs support from the top, which Mr. President is providing, and then we need similar support also from the ministries, departments, and agencies, that their rules are also captured in the Act. These are just basic things for us to do. And if we can do this and then strengthen here is by making sure that we work with the National Council on Climate Change as a coordinating body in line with their functions in Section 4 of the Act, then we'll be able to make that progress. I narrated earlier how we have been moving gradually. I recall when I was appointed to chair climate change in the 8th Assembly. It was not funny. It was not listed amongst either Class A, B, C. It was just any other and others. And my colleagues, some of my colleagues, not all of them, would make jest of me by calling me the rainmaker, because that was a reflection of their level of understanding what climate change was all about. But there were many more who understood it, and either from their wives or something, who also extended support. But from the 8th Assembly, when we pushed the bill, and it did not go through until the 9th Assembly, the level of awareness increased. In fact, I got tremendous, resounding support from the then Speaker of the House of Representatives, now Chief of Staff to Mr. President, His Excellency Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila. Because he joined hands with me to make sure we push forward. So the bill is strong, the act is strong. All we need to do is to create that support, know that we have an umbrella body now. So that way, you will not be thinking about what is it that's missing. Yes, there could be one or two things that perhaps you want to change or amend, but it makes sense for you to put this into full effect, so that if you are noticing any gap or any mischief or any breach, then you'll be able to address it. For now, that bill provides, you were talking about awareness the other time. If you go to Section 26 of the Act, you would find provisions that we need to incorporate climate change into the curricula of our people, either in primary school, secondary school, or in tertiary education. And I'm happy to tell you that the very last time I met with one of the deputy executive secretaries of the National Universities Commission, told me they were on their way towards including that as part of the GS courses. Whether they have done that or not, I do not know. But I know that this is something that is being considered by them. So similarly, if we also have this in the primary and secondary education, we'll be creating that awareness without even knowing it. Again, we have a provision of the Act that requires the National Council on Climate Change to once in a while engage with the CSOs, and so that everyone is on board. So for me, I think we have an act, not that it is all impressive, but that has the potential, enough provisions to be able to capture this. Because today, everyone, you can see that all the ministries are one way or the other affected by the provisions of the Act, or one way or the other impacted by climate change. So that's why you need an umbrella body. You don't want to be dealing with just one ministry alone. So for me, that Act is in a very good position. It needs the support of all. And I want to thank Mr. President for how he has exercised leadership. So it requires the coming together of these other, ministries, departments, and agencies, because they all were appointed by Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Honorable. The Act needs to be supported. Thank you so much. We'll take a break now. When we come back, the conversation continues. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And our discussion is still on COP29 Summit on climate change. And our guests, they are still with us. Let's go back to the DG because we gathered that you will soon be leaving us. So just want to ask you this question. What next steps do you think Nigeria should take to ensure effective implementation of COP29 agreement?
COP29 agreement. So, like I earlier said, we're still at the negotiation table. We're hoping that they'll be able to agree with Africa's position with regards to the things we've tabled for Article 6 and also the climate finance. But like I said, one of the takeaways for us leaving the COP29 is coming back home and ensuring that there's an alignment with our net zero investment plan, the NDC implementation plan, framework that we're turning to plan, financial plan, the ETP as well, and the adaptation compact, to ensure that there's a synergy and that we're able to produce one document that shows an investor very clearly a pipeline of projects and investable opportunities or investment opportunities. That for me is the key takeaway from COP29, because we cannot be asking for finance, we cannot be asking for funding, and then we do not have a document, we do not have a clear strategy to show investors or investors where to invest in. Yes, we have the ETP, yes, and several other documents, but let there be an alignment and synergy. So those are part of the things we're also working towards. And then very clear as well is ensuring, for me again, to take away from COP29, that all the voices are part of our NDC review, NDC 3.0. The Ministry of Finance is key. In time past, you have not seen Ministry of Finance take the lead with regards to NDC development. But what has that done? What that has done is that we develop a document that doesn't have clear investment strategies, that doesn't have very clear finance outlook, because the Ministry of Finance will let us know what we can do with granting, where we can maybe put concessional financing and all that. So working closely with the Ministry of Finance, working closely with the budget and planning, because these are very key entities. So that for me is the takeaway from here, to ensure that come COP30, Nigeria, number one, will be able to have a very clear investment strategy for our NDCs. Number two, that we have been able to close the gap between the subnationals and the national. Number three, that we have been able to create synergy with all the relevant MDAs with regards to reviewing our NDC. For me, those three takeaways and those three next steps are very critical to ensure that come COP30, we are not we're coming back, with more zest. That we already have that, but coming back and saying that this is what we've been able to achieve following from COP29, and this is what we want more. So we can be able to make more demand. And again, before I forget, working closely with the private sector. And like Dr. May said, have clear policies to ensure that when the private sector invests, that they know that they're going to get their money back. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, DG. Let me quickly get to Representative Samuel Onigbo so that we can let both of you go. Now, the issue of financing climate targets and reducing carbon footprints have, elicited arguments between small polluters and the big polluters. Where has COP29 led us in terms of this debate? And has it been able to resolve the issues here?
Well, before I answer that, let me quickly touch on a few things that the DG said about getting the Ministry of Finance to be part of what they want to develop, particularly looking at the NDCs that we are going to come up with in the near future. I think next one is due next year. The important thing there is, yes, I want to commend her for acknowledging that there's need for that collaboration. But why I'm using that word is because the act clearly captures the Ministry of Finance. It captures the Ministry of, National Planning and Trade and the rest of them. That these ones, Ministry of Justice as well, these ones that have roles to play, because in structuring this act, we started thinking into the future. So it's important for you to get the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of National Planning to please, for them to come on board, even the Ministry of Trade, because these things are not just done, in silos. They are done in a collaborative manner to be able to get the desired outcome. Now, on your question on whether we are making progress, you had the DG, negotiations are still ongoing, but there's no doubt whatsoever that following the inaugural climate summits of African heads of state and governments in September 2023 in Nairobi, Kenya, a lot of awareness and a lot of strategy, has come up around Africa, so that when we're doing things, we're doing it in a coordinated manner. Because if you were to go one by one, you probably not make the impact. But coming together now as a team, we get attention, and from that attention, we are likely to achieve, very useful and fruitful resolutions. So that's about that one. But there's no doubt, even the issue of Article 6, on carbon market that we talked about, that is contained there, Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, whether you're talking about 6.2 or 6.4, 6.8, these things require knowledge. And it's important that Nigerians begin to study, look for information, so that the knowledge gap is reduced. So that when we come out as Nigerians to discuss these things, we are sufficiently, adequately armed to be able to talk about them and extract, the kind of outcome that we want to extract from negotiations. So we need to look at those things and make sure that we are working as a team. There's no doubt, with the kind of leadership that Mr. President has provided, he has exercised leadership on this issue of climate change far beyond, maybe what a lot of people are yet to capture. So with that, following his pronouncements with actions, verifiable actions, I think we are on the right path. And in no doubt, and in no time, we'll be able to begin to see the values. But let me conclude by saying that there are also people who are engaged with other donor agencies and all, aside of organizations or even some of the subnationals. So it does not mean that we are starting and ending just with maybe what we're doing as a delegation. There are even private people who have come. That's why sometimes when you look at the number of people that they say it's Nigerian delegation, Some of them come from London, but they are carrying Nigerian passports. So there are people engaging, and these engagements, from what we know now, have the potential to bear fruits. Thank you for your time, so that I'll be able to.
All right, Representative Samuel Onigbo, unfortunately we have to let you go. I had thought you would make reference to food security and health, but nonetheless, we thank you very much for your time from Baku in Azerbaijan. Thank you very much. And
okay, talking about security and health, there's nexus between climate change and security and health. Okay.
Food security and health.
Absolutely. That's why we are saying that there's need for better understanding of what the Act captures. The Act captures that you have to work with Ministry of Agriculture. The Act also captures that you have to work with the National Security Advisor, who is sitting on that council. So because it is only when you have that security, you are producing enough, you have food security. But if you have insurgency, banditry, or people not being able to go to their farms, at the end of the day, you are likely to have challenge with your food security. But if you have what you have planted over a period of time, destroyed by flood, wiped away by flood, or desertification, it has the potential to impact and create problems for you in your food security. So these things are intertwined, they're integrated. So we have to, that's why I'm saying we have to look at the Act, follow the provisions of the Act, and now work together to be able to achieve our aims.
So Representative Samuel Onigbo, we thank you very much for your contributions to Good Morning Nigeria this morning. Thank you for your time. Let me also thank Dr. Nkiruka Madwekwe, DG CEO, National Council on Climate Change. It's been a pleasure also having you talk with us from Baku in Azerbaijan.
Permit me to add a bit on the health aspect. As you know, we're also adding health as one of the priority areas for us in the NDC review. So that also says to you that we've identified that health is very essential to us meeting our climate actions, and also seeing the intersection between climate change and health as well, because when you have flooding, the health is your health is impacted. When you cannot feed, you have malnourishment and all that. So there's a very clear intersection between health and climate change. So thank you so much
for the contribution, and we wish you fruitful engagement in your meeting. All right, back.
Yes. Thank you so much. Let's get back to Professor Farouk. I mean, he's still with us. We're talking about this COP29, 28, 29, but the most important.
We're even talking about 30 already.
Well, but the real thing is about action. Just like your Honorable Onigbo talked about, the need for us to have the action. What advice would you give, I mean, to our policymakers, our stakeholders on effective climate, change action?
Excellent. I think as much as the fancy meetings are taking place, the fancy discourse using vocabularies, they are good. They are enablers. They provide the environment, the policy, the law, and to enable, policies to be implemented. There are emerging concepts that are very, very important for tackling the issue of climate change. Example is the concept of climate crisis, climate, looking climate from the lens of a disaster, and climate justice, looking at climate change issues from the angle of the people that were vulnerable, marginalized population. I think it's very important for our policymakers to understand this concept clearly. For an investor, we've been talking about investment, financing, For an investor, climate change can be an opportunity for him to invest his money and reap a lot of reward, which there are a lot of opportunities in climate change, yes. But for policymakers and government, the most important lens is look at climate change, to look at it as an emergency, as a disaster, as a crisis. Putting that lens or understanding it in that concept will now trigger more action than just policy formulation and in the emergency management. When disasters strike, the first thing is to respond and then and complete the cycle. So climate change, as of today, is a crisis, it's a disaster, and for our policymakers, they just have to look at it this way for them to respond appropriately. For other sectors, yes, they can look at climate change as an opportunity to invest, as an opportunity to do so many things. But really, especially in Nigeria, in African countries, it is even when we see it as a disaster, then we'll put more pressure to get the funding to take care of the disaster. But if we continue with the elitist meetings and fancy meetings, then the real marginalized people that are more vulnerable to climate change will continue to lavish in anguish, in poverty, and in death, because climate change can bring death directly. And we are seeing it already happening. So it should be taken as a very serious issue. It should be at the front of any discussion, and should be given that attention of an emergency.
Salam, thank you very much. And just as we wind down here, we're already talking about COP30. Some people are already talking about COP30 in Brazil. But how do we make COP29 count? What actions need to be taken back home after COP29 to make it count?
Yes, we're already talking about COP29, COP30. Yes, we are. So one of the things, like I said, is how do we position ourselves enough to get grants, get climate finance that is already there? How can they make it easy for Africans to access? Because sometimes you have this money promised, but to get it is a whole lot of another business entirely. So how do we get it? So we are hoping that we'll get access to funding, we have better collaboration, we come back, have better engagement back home, engage our private sectors so that they can invest, they have the money, invest the money in sustainable practices, in research, in technology, in smart agriculture, because now the food inflation is something else for us. How do we make sure that we have food that it doesn't become too expensive compared to income, right? How is it coming up? We are just talking about food security. You can have food, but is it nutritious? Not just food. Is it safe? Is it safe to eat? Or you eat it and is infected? We're not even talking about these impacts of this on our plants, on the food that in the next 10 years, you can't even export your food because it doesn't meet international standard. You're not getting enough forest. So there are a lot of things we need to look into to unbundle whatever it is. We are also talking about loss and damage. How are you compensating people that are living in vulnerable areas that are being affected mostly? Look at Niger Delta. Look at people that live at the coastal region. We were talking about the oil, the water. Do they have access to water? So one of the things Nigeria is going to, one of the MDCs you're looking at, water, waste management, agricultural sector, renewable energy, their transport system. What's our transport system like? So that's why they're talking about, investing in CNG, investing in electric cars. But then it doesn't work. Even the ones we have, how are they doing it? How do we drive? You see cars in Abuja emitting black smoke in a capital city. You see trucks moving without. It's like you look at the person driving and you're wondering, how did you get the license? So apart from that, these are small things. How are we reducing the emission, but also reducing the emission in such a way that we transit what they call just transition. We transit to not using fossil fuel, but it doesn't affect us in a way that we become poorer. No. So how do we do all of these? These are things that are going to be unbundled, even though they speak as BB English. These are important meetings, but it's not left for us to implement in such a way that it helps us in a way that we can move. You see it as a good business to invest in. Like I talked about businesses investing in sustainable practice. A lot of businesses think it's okay to just dispose your waste, your effluent without treating it. But if they understand that it comes back to bite you it becomes a business. You don't just dispose your waste like that or dispose your effluent like that. You know that I'm supposed to treat it to meet the standard before I dispose into the environment, right? But until you see it that way, how you are affecting the community. So if you just destroy the Niger Delta, tomorrow you won't have business. So if you take care of Niger Delta, that means there will be business tomorrow. So by the time you start seeing sustainable businesses or sustainable practices as good business, then you look at it differently with another lens. So these are things I want to say. Yes, we are planning for COP30, but we need to sit down and unbundle it.
Okay.
Unbundle it with different sectors.
All right, I
thank
think
you so
we
much.
just have enough time to take the final word from Prof.
All right. Final words. Climate change is an cubicle. It's a crisis. The impacts are here. We've seen the impacts in almost every sector of our livelihood, health, whatever you can think of. And as quick as we understand that this is a global and a national crisis, as soon as we act, we act the way we're supposed to act. A lot of awareness, a lot of campaign. I'm happy the DJ has taken that on it, and then the solution is to have adaptation strategies. Our adaptation strategies can be so many. Even providing friendly energy for domestic use is one of a strategy that can really help in alleviating suffering for people at the down level. So making energy cheaper, accessible, and affordable is one of the major strategy. I think in every serious society will really look at it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Professor Farouk, for your contribution this morning. Professor Awal Farouk Abdusalam is the Professor of Applied Meteorology and Environmental Sustainability, Kaduna State University. Thank you so much for your contribution. The impact is here, the impact is visible, and we need to act. Thank you. Also, we want to thank Dr. Chimere May.
I have final words too.
Your final word? Yeah, I think you spoke. You have said it. Maybe another time. Another time. Thank you, environmental toxicologist and public health expert. Thank you so much for coming. We'll have you again so you can give us another final word. Well, that's Good Morning Nigeria. That's for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I am Ademola Adeoye. Do have a lovely day.
And I'm Victor Azu. We'll see you again tomorrow.